Hello, everyone. Welcome to 90 Day Truth Files. Real stories, real truth. Subscribe now. The airport lights were too bright, too clean, too final. Jenny stood near the gate, clutching her passport like it was the last piece of her old life still in her hands. Behind her, Sumit's voice echoed through the crowd, cracking mid-word as he tried to reach her. The cameras didn't even need direction anymore. Everyone watching knew this was the end of something the show had built for a decade. He stumbled forward, barefoot, out of breath, face wet with tears that didn't care about pride. Jenny, his voice barely carried over the flight announcements. The crowd turned, some recognizing him, some realizing they were witnessing what fans had prayed would never happen. She didn't move. Her shoulders were shaking, but her eyes stayed on the departure screen. The irony was brutal. The same woman who had crossed oceans to be with him was now crossing one to get away. And Sumit, the man who once swore he would never let her go, could only watch helplessly as the gate attendant called final boarding. You could see the years in their faces. Every fight, every visa battle, every promise that things would get better. All those nights Jenny cried alone, waiting for him to choose her. Over his family, all those mornings he promised he would. When she finally turned around, it wasn't anger in her eyes. It was emptiness, the kind that comes when you stop hoping. Sumit took one step closer before his knees gave out. Crew members rushed toward him, but he waved them off, staring at her like he still believed she might change her mind. What made her finally walk away after everything? And if love survived every storm before, why not this one? Something inside both of them had already ended before she ever booked that flight. The night before it all fell apart, everything looked strangely normal. The apartment was quiet, the air heavy with the smell of chai and leftover curry. Jenny sat across the table from Sumit, quietly stirring her tea while he smiled like a man who thought silence meant comfort. It didn't. That silence was loaded. It was the kind that hides exhaustion under polite smiles. The kind that says, "I've already made my decision." Without saying a word, Sumit talked about fixing the leaking pipe, about visiting his parents soon, about maybe taking a small trip to Jaipur once things calmed down. He sounded relaxed, even hopeful. Jenny nodded along, half listening, half somewhere else. She wasn't angry anymore, and that's what made it terrifying. Anger means you still care enough to fight. Jenny was past that point. She looked tired in a way makeup couldn't hide. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones when every day is a new version of the same argument. He kept thinking time would heal things, but time had done the opposite. It had only made her more aware that nothing was changing. Sumit had no idea this was their last dinner together. For him, that night was calm, simple, normal. For her, it was the quiet before collapse. Every laugh, every word, every glance felt like a goodbye she couldn't say out loud. You can always feel when someone's spirit has already left the room, even when their body is still sitting in front of you. Jenny's thoughts drifted back to the early years. When she first came to India, she believed love could rewrite everything. Family disapproval, culture shock, even age. She believed in the fairy tale because she had to. But over the years, reality didn't just test her. It wore her down. The stares, the gossip, the endless disapproval from his parents, all of it chipped away at her hope until it became something small and fragile. Sumit, on the other hand, lived inside a bubble of denial. Every time things got hard, he'd tell himself they'd already beaten the odds. He'd remind her how they'd survived every obstacle. If we made it this far, we'll make it all the way, he'd say. But making it meant something different to each of them. Now for him, it meant staying together at any cost. For her, it meant surviving, even if it meant being alone. He reached for her hand across the table. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold out either. That small pause told a whole history. She smiled faintly and said, "It's been a long day." He nodded, thinking she meant the errands or the heat. She meant the last 10 years. Sumit started scrolling through his phone, showing her a video of a cute dog TRYG to make her laugh. She did softly out of habit. That's what long relationships become sometimes. Habits stitched together by memories of what used to be love. He didn't notice how her eyes kept darting toward the packed corner of the room where her old suitcase sat half. hidden behind the dresser. Later that night, she pretended to sleep while he planned tomorrow's breakfast. He didn't see her eyes open in the dark or the way she stared at the ceiling, silently rehearsing how to say goodbye. Every I'll fix it had started to sound like background noise. The fans always saw. Jenny is patient, maybe too patient, but patience can turn into quiet resignation. She had reached that breaking point where you stop trying to be understood and start planning your escape. The clock ticked past midnight. Soon it was snoring softly. Jenny rolled over watching him. His face looked peaceful, like a man who still believed tomorrow would look the same. She wanted to feel that peace, but all she felt was dread because tomorrow wasn't going to be the same. Sometimes love doesn't end with a fight. It ends with silence and a suitcase waiting by the door. First rays of light crept through the thin curtains. Jenny was already awake. She sat up, brushed her hair back, and took a long breath. Her decision had stopped feeling dramatic. It just felt necessary. The apartment was still, the kind of stillness that feels like holding your breath before something irreversible happens. She moved quietly, opening drawers, taking out her things one by one. The same clothes she'd folded so many times before. The same blouse she wore when she first landed in Delhi, full of dreams. Every item she touched carried a memory, and every memory hurt a little. Sumit mumbled something in his sleep, probably her name, the way he always did when he had good dreams. She froze for a second, her eyes welling up, then wiped them quickly. She didn't want to cry yet, not before she was gone. The camera crew hadn't arrived. There were no producers whispering through headsets yet. It was just Jenny and the sound of zippers and hangers. Quiet, slow, deliberate. When Sumit finally stirred, she had already packed half her life into that single suitcase. He smiled sleepily, unaware of what was waiting behind him. He thought it was another normal day, but that suitcase sitting open on the bed was about to change everything. The calm was over. The silence had done its job. The storm was coming. Jen's hands shook as she folded the teal blouse. The same one she wore during her first trip to India when she still believed this country would become her forever home. Back then, everything had felt bright. Every street sound, every smell, every smile from a stranger had felt like proof she had made the right choice. Now, the same walls felt smaller. The same colors looked dull. It wasn't India that changed. It was how heavy love had become. The house was too quiet. You could hear the hum of the ceiling fan, the faint call of vendors outside, and the creak of the wardrobe door every time she opened it. She packed slowly, carefully, like she was afraid the noise itself would break her resolve. Each item she folded carried years of memories, every one of them bittersweet. There was the scarf Sumit bought her on their first date, the small Ganesha statue their neighbor had given her for luck, the silver ring he once slipped on her finger when the cameras were off. All of it went into the suitcase. She wasn't throwing away their past. She was preserving it. Like people keep photos of something that no longer exists. Once love turns into survival, every memory starts feeling like evidence of what you've already lost. In another room, Sumit was humming, still half asleep, making chai like he always did. That hum used to make her smile. Today it hurt. It reminded her of everything simple between them that never stayed simple for long. She could already imagine what would happen when he walked into the room. Confusion, panic, denial. She had lived that loop too many times to replay it again. People might say she should have told him sooner. But how do you tell someone you love that you're leaving? Because love itself has become unbearable. She had tried every version of that conversation before. It always ended the same. He'd cry, promise to change, and convince her to stay. Then weeks later, his parents would call and everything would reset. Sumit wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. He loved her in his own way. He just never loved her loudly enough to silence everyone else. Every time he said next month or I'll talk to them again, Lenny lost another piece of Sumit, stepped into the bedroom with a sleepy smile, holding 2 cups of chai like it was any other morning. He paused mid-step. The suitcase on the bed was open, half full, and Jenny's hands were moving with a calm that didn't match what she was doing. For a second, he didn't speak. His eyes scanned the room like he was trying to convince himself he was misunderstanding the scene. Then his voice came out soft, confused. What are you doing?" Jenny didn't look up right away. She folded another shirt, placed it neatly inside, and zipped a side pocket. Her face was steady, but her throat was tight. It wasn't a performance. It was the look of someone who had cried all her tears in private months ago. Sumit took a step closer, still holding the chai, still trying to keep the moment normal. "Are we going somewhere?" he asked, forcing a small laugh. Jenny finally raised her eyes. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. "I am," she said quietly. The words landed like a slap, not because they were loud, but because they were final. Sumit's smile fell apart instantly. He set the cups down too fast on the dresser, chai splashing slightly. "What do you mean you are?" he asked, blinking hard like the answer could change if he asked again. Jenny swallowed and looked back at the suitcase. "I'm going home." He stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "Home is here," he said, voice rising. "You came here for me. We are together. We are married." Jenny exhaled through her nose, the smallest shake in her hands giving away how much it hurt to stay calm. "We are married," she repeated. "But I've been alone here for a long time." The room went quiet, except for the fan overhead and the distant honking outside. Sumit's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to the suitcase again, as if seeing it for the first time. Then he rushed to the closet, yanking it open like he was checking if she was missing anything. He grabbed a dress from a hanger. "You're upset," he said quickly, talking faster now. "It's okay. We had a fight. We always fight. You will calm down. Please, Jenny, don't do this." Jenny stood up slowly, her knees feeling weak, and she faced him fully. "This isn't about one fight," she said. "This is about 10 years of the same fight." That hit him. You could see it in his eyes, the way his confidence cracked. He rubbed his forehead with both hands, trying to organize his thoughts. "But we survived everything," he said, voice trembling. "My parents, society, the age, the divorce, the lies, the police, everything. We survived. If we survived that, why are you leaving now?" Jenny's lips pressed together. She looked at the floor for a second, then back at him. "Because surviving isn't living," she said. "And I'm tired of surviving." Sumit shook his head, aggressively, like he could shake the words out of the air. "No, no, no," he muttered. "This is not happening." Then he did what he always did when he was scared. He promised. He promised fast, big, desperate. "I will fix everything," he said. "I will talk to my parents again. I will do it today. I swear. I will do anything. Just don't go." Jenny's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. That was the scariest part for him. He had seen her cry 1,000 times. Tears meant there was still a chance. This calm meant the decision was already made. "You've said that," she replied gently. "You've said it every time." He stepped closer, hands reaching for her arms, like if he held her body she couldn't leave. "This time is different," he insisted. "I am serious. I will choose you. I will choose you now." Jenny didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in. Her voice stayed steady. "You've always loved me," she said, "but you've never chosen me when it mattered." Sumit's face tightened. "That's not true," he said, but his voice sounded weak, like he didn't fully believe himself. Jenny nodded slowly, as if she'd already accepted the truth a long time ago. "You chose me in private," she said, "but in public, in front of your family, in front of the world, you always needed more time." She glanced toward the suitcase again. "I ran out of time." Sumit suddenly dropped to sit on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't leave me." Jenny's heart squeezed, so hard it almost made her change her mind. That's the thing about real love. Even when it's hurting you, it can still pull you back. But then she remembered the nights she begged him to stand up for her. The mornings she stayed quiet to avoid conflict. The birthdays that passed with tension. The constant feeling of being unwanted by everyone except him, and even him only in pieces. She remembered all the times she defended him to her daughter and friends. She remembered telling herself, just a little longer, just one more try. And she realized if she stayed, she would spend the rest of her life waiting for a moment that would never come. Jenny bent down and zipped the suitcase fully. The sound of the zipper was loud in that room. Loud like a door closing. Sumit's head snapped up. "You already bought ticket," he said, voice breaking on the word. Jenny hesitated for half a second. Then she nodded. Sumit stood up so fast the bed creaked. "When?" he demanded, panic rising. "When is the flight?" Jenny answered quietly. "Today." Sumit's breathing changed instantly. Quick, shallow. His eyes went wild. "Today," he repeated, like the concept was impossible. "No. No, you can't. Please, you can't." He looked around, like searching for someone to stop this, like a producer would jump in and call cut and tell him it was a prank. But there was no prank. This was real. Jenny grabbed her bag and her passport from the table. When he saw the passport in her hand, something inside him snapped. He grabbed his phone, shaking, and dialed his mother immediately. Not to tell her goodbye, not to ask for blessing, to beg for permission to keep his wife. When his mother didn't answer, he called again and again. Jenny watched him, a sad softness in her eyes, because even now, even at the very end, he still ran to them before he ran to her. Sumit finally got through. His voice was frantic. "Mom, please," he said, almost crying. "Please talk to Jenny. She is leaving. She is going to airport. Please, just say something. Please tell her to stay." Jenny could hear the faint voice on the other end. Sharp, annoyed, refusing. She didn't need to hear the full words to understand. It was the same conversation, just louder now. Sumit's shoulders sank. He ended the call and stared at Jenny like he'd been punched. "They don't care," he whispered, shocked like he was realizing it for the first time. Jenny picked up her suitcase handle. "I know," she said. "That's why I can't do this anymore." Sumit moved to block the door, arms out, desperate. "You can't go," he said. "If you go, I will die." Jenny's eyes widened with pain. "Don't say that," she pleaded. "Please don't put that on me." He was crying now, full body crying, not caring how it looked. "Then what I do," he sobbed. "You are my life." Jenny took a deep breath, voice cracking for the first time. "I was supposed to be your life," she said. "Not your secret. Not your problem. Not your fight you never finish." She reached for the door handle gently. "Move, Sumit." He shook his head, tears spilling. "No," Jenny's voice got firmer, not angry, just serious. "Move." Something in her tone made him step back. Slowly, like a child who knows he's losing. Jenny opened the door. The hallway outside looked brighter than the room, like the world was pulling her out. Sumit followed her out immediately, barefoot, stumbling, grabbing the suitcase handle with her. "I will come," he said. "I will come with you." Jenny stopped and turned. "You can't," she said. "You'll hate me in America. You'll miss your family. You'll blame me. And I can't carry that too." Sumit's mouth trembled. "Then stay here," he begged. Jenny shook her head once. "I tried," she whispered. "I tried longer than I should have." Downstairs, the taxi was already waiting. The driver glanced at them, then looked away awkwardly. Jenny pulled the suitcase from Sumit's grip and rolled it toward the car. Sumit ran ahead and opened the door like if he acted normal, it would become normal. "Please," he said again, softer now. "Just talk to me. Just give me one chance." Jenny placed the suitcase into the trunk. Her hands were shaking now, but she kept moving. If she stopped moving, she would collapse. She turned to him and held his face in her hands for a moment. That simple touch broke him. He leaned into her palms, crying like a child. "I love you," he whispered. Jenny's eyes filled. "I love you too," she said. "That's why I have to go." And then she got into the taxi. Sumit stood in the street barefoot, watching as the car pulled away. For a second, he ran after it, hand outstretched like he could grab the air and stop the future. The taxi turned the corner, and she was gone. And that's when the breakdown really started. Because in that moment, it wasn't just Jenny leaving India. It was the last excuse leaving with her. Sumit fell to his knees right there on the street, head down, sobbing so hard his shoulders shook. Neighbors peeked through windows. A man walking by slowed down, recognized him, and then looked away, uncomfortable. The camera crew had arrived by then, and the lens stayed on him, silent and brutal, because there was nothing left to explain. No twist, no cliffhanger, no big reveal that could fix it. Jenny had finally done the one thing fans never thought she would do. She chose herself, and Sumit was left behind with nothing but regrets. But the real shock wasn't just that she left. It was what happened next. Because the moment Jenny's plane ticket became real, Sumit made a decision that nobody saw coming. One last move, one desperate gamble, and it would either bring Jenny back or destroy him completely. Sumit stayed on his knees long after the taxi disappeared. The streets slowly returned to normal, but nothing inside him did. The early morning noise of vendors and passing scooters sounded distant, like it was happening in another world. For 10 years, every decision he made somehow led back to Jenny. Every excuse, every promise, every delay had been built around the idea that she would always stay. And now she wasn't there. A production assistant approached carefully, unsure whether to help or keep filming. Sumit didn't notice. His eyes stayed fixed on the empty road where the taxi had vanished. His chest rose and fell rapidly, like he'd just finished running a marathon. He couldn't win. One thought kept repeating in his mind. She's really gone. He stood up slowly, legs weak, and walked back inside the apartment like someone entering a place that no longer belonged to him. The door creaked open. The silence inside hit harder than anything outside. Jenny's slippers were still near the couch. Her favorite mug sat in the sink. A faint trace of her perfume lingered in the air. All the little signs of her presence remained, but she didn't. That kind of absence is louder than any argument. Sumit walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The half-empty closet stared back at him like evidence of a crime he committed against his own happiness. He picked up one of her scarves left behind accidentally and pressed it to his face. The scent nearly broke him again. "I messed up," he whispered to the empty room. For years, he believed time was on his side. That Jenny loved him enough to wait forever. That eventually his parents would soften, society would accept them, and everything would fall into place. But love doesn't run on unlimited patience. It runs on effort, on action, on choosing each other publicly, not just privately. And he realized too late that he had always chosen comfort over courage. His phone buzzed suddenly. A message from a producer. "Where's Jenny now?" He stared at the screen for a long time before replying with 3 words. "On her way." But even as he typed it, something inside him snapped into motion. A wave of panic surged through his chest. On her way wasn't final yet. She hadn't boarded. She hadn't taken off. There was still time. Sumit stood abruptly. If he let her get on that plane without one last fight, he would regret it for the rest of his life. He grabbed his phone, wallet, and keys without thinking. No plan, no speech prepared. Just raw desperation pushing him forward. He rushed out of the apartment, barely locking the door, and ran down the stairs 2 at a time. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, traffic thickening. He looked around frantically for a ride. No taxi nearby. No driver waiting. "Airport," he muttered to himself. "I have to get to the airport." He ran down the street, waving at passing cars until one finally slowed. The driver recognized him immediately. "You are from TV, right?" the driver asked. "Please," Sumit said breathlessly. "Airport. Fast." The urgency in his voice erased any curiosity. The driver nodded and stepped on the gas. As the car sped through traffic, Sumit's mind raced even faster. What would he say when he got there? What could he possibly say that he hadn't already said 100 times before? Promises meant nothing now. Words had expired. Only actions mattered. He opened his phone and scrolled to Jenny's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he pressed it. It rang and rang, and rang.no answered. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. "Jenny," he said when the tone beeped, voice shaking. "Please don't board yet. Just wait for me. I'm coming. Please." He ended the call and leaned back in. The seat, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every red light felt like torture. Every slow vehicle ahead felt like an enemy. At the airport, Jenny stood near the entrance, suitcase beside her, passport in hand. The glass doors reflected a woman who looked calmer than she felt. Inside, her heart was breaking in slow motion. This wasn't how she imagined the end of her love story. Not after everything they survived. Not after the years she spent believing their love was stronger than culture, stronger than family pressure, stronger than distance. But strength without support eventually turns into exhaustion. She stepped inside the airport, joining the line for check-in. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not because she doubted her decision, because decisions like this always come with grief. Her phone vibrated in her hand. Sumit's name flashed on the screen. She stared at it without answering. If she heard his voice now, she might crumble. And she had worked too hard to finally choose herself. So she let it ring. At security, the airport lights felt harsh, almost unreal. The announcements echoed overhead. People moved around her with suitcases and boarding passes, living their own stories. None of them knew they were walking past the end of a decade-long love story. Jenny reached the departure gate and sat down. Her eyes drifted to the large window showing planes taxiing outside. Each one represented a different life, a different direction. She thought about the first time she flew to India. The excitement, the nerves, the hope. Back then, she believed love would conquer everything. Now she knew love alone wasn't always enough. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. A message this time. From Sumit. I'm coming to the airport. Please wait. Just talk to me once. Her chest tightened instantly. She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Part of her wanted to run. Part of her wanted to stay. That's the cruel thing about real love. Even when it's ending, it still pulls at you. Meanwhile, Sumit's car screeched into the airport drop-off zone. He threw money at the driver without waiting for change and jumped out, scanning the massive entrance with wild eyes. Crowds everywhere. Suitcases rolling. Voices overlapping. But no Jenny. He ran inside, ignoring the stairs, ignoring the cameras now trailing him. Panic surged stronger with each second. He checked the departure board. Flights to America. Several listed. Which one was hers? His breathing grew ragged as he rushed toward the security area, only to be stopped by guards. Ticket, one asked firmly. I need to see my wife, Sumit said desperately. Please. She is leaving. Just 5 minutes. The guard shook his head. No ticket, no entry. For a moment, everything froze. Jenny was somewhere beyond those gates that so close, yet completely unreachable. Sumit stepped back slowly, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Then he did something nobody expected. Something so desperate it shocked even the crew filming him. He walked straight to the ticket counter. If he couldn't go inside without a ticket, then he would buy one, even if it meant following her across the world. Sumit stood at the ticket counter, chest rising and falling like he'd just sprinted across the entire city. The woman behind the desk looked up politely, clearly used to stress travelers, but not this level of desperation. Next, she said calmly. Sumit stepped forward, hands shaking slightly against the counter. I need the earliest flight to America, he said without hesitation. Any city, just the fastest one leaving. The agent typed quickly, glancing at the screen. There's a flight to New York boarding in about 1 hour, she replied. But it's almost full and very expensive. Are you sure? Yes, Sumit answered instantly. His voice carried a firmness that surprised even him. Book it. For the first time in years, he wasn't asking his parents. He wasn't hesitating. He wasn't waiting for approval. He was choosing. The agent quoted the price. It was high, much higher than he expected. For a split second, reality hit him. His savings weren't endless. His life in India, his responsibilities, everything waited here. But then he imagined Jenny boarding that plane alone. Imagine the empty apartment tonight. Imagine waking up tomorrow knowing he didn't even try. Do it, he said again, louder this time. His card slid across the counter. Approved. The printer whirred softly as the boarding pass came out. The agent handed it to him with a neutral smile, unaware she had just printed the most important decision of his life. Gate 27, she said. Sumit grabbed the ticket and ran. Inside the departure area, Jenny sat quietly near her gate, staring at nothing in particular. Around her, travelers scrolled through phones, sipped coffee, talked about vacations and business trips. Normal life moved forward, but inside her chest, everything felt suspended. She checked the time. Boarding would begin soon. Once she stepped onto that plane, this chapter would officially close. There would be no dramatic reversal, no sudden miracle. Just distance. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Sumit. I'm inside the airport. Please don't leave yet. Her heart skipped painfully. Inside the airport? How? She stood up slowly, scanning the crowd almost against her will. Part of her hoped not to see him, because seeing him would make everything harder. Then she saw movement near the far end of the terminal. A familiar figure pushing through people, breathless, hair messy, eyes frantic. Sumit. For a moment, everything around them blurred. The noise, the announcements, the crowds. It all faded into background static. He spotted her at the same time. Their eyes locked. Sumit stopped a few feet away, bending forward slightly, hands on his knees as he caught his breath. He looked like a man who had run through every fear he'd ever had just to reach this point. Jenny's lips parted slightly. She hadn't prepared for this. She thought their goodbye had already happened. You came, she whispered. Sumit straightened slowly, holding up his boarding pass like proof. I'm coming with you, he said. The words hit her harder than any argument ever had. For years, she had begged him to choose her openly, to stand beside her without hesitation, to take bold steps instead of small promises. And now, when she had finally decided to leave, he had done exactly that. Jenny felt her composure crack. Tears filled her eyes despite her effort to stay strong. Why now? She asked softly. Why only now? Sumit stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. His voice trembled, but his words were clear. Because I finally understand what losing you really means, he said. Not just fighting with you. Not just another breakup. Losing you forever. Jenny looked down at the floor, swallowing hard. I thought you would always stay, he continued. I thought love was enough to keep you here. But I was wrong. Love needs action. And I didn't act when it mattered. Silence hung between them, heavy and honest. Around them, passengers began lining up for boarding. The announcement echoed through the gate, calling Jenny's flight number. Final boarding would begin soon. Jenny glanced toward the line, then back at Sumit. You can't just follow me because you're scared, she said quietly. Life in America isn't simple. You'll miss your family, your culture, everything. Sumit nodded slowly. I know, he admitted, but I'd rather struggle with you than live comfortably without you. That sentence landed deep. For the first time in years, his words didn't sound like temporary promises. They sounded like a decision already made. Jenny's heart pounded painfully. This was the moment she had once dreamed of, the moment where he chose her without hesitation, without conditions. But timing changes everything. Sumit, she said gently, I needed this years ago. He closed his eyes briefly, pain flashing across his face. I know, he whispered, and I hate myself for being late. The boarding announcement echoed again. Passengers moved forward steadily now. The line grew shorter. Time was running out. Sumit took one more step toward her. Just give us one more chance, he said. Not the old way. A new way. No secrets. No waiting. I'll do whatever it takes. Jenny stared at him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. 10 years of love. 10 years of waiting. 10 years of hoping for this exact moment. And now it had arrived when everything was already ending. She looked at the boarding gate, then at Sumit, then back at the gate. The final call for passengers echoed loudly through the terminal. This was it. One decision would change both their lives forever. Would Jenny walk onto that plane alone and close the chapter for good? Or would she turn around and give their love one last chance after everything? Her next move would shock everyone watching. Part 4, continuous script. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal again. Louder this time, more urgent. The airline staff stood near the gate, scanning the remaining passengers with practiced impatience. Anyone left behind now would miss the flight. There would be no more announcements, no more delays. Jenny stood frozen between two futures. One path led forward, onto the plane, into a life where she finally chose herself without compromise. The other path led back into uncertainty, back into love that had both lifted and exhausted her for a decade. Sumit didn't speak. For once, he didn't beg or interrupt. He simply stood there, eyes red, breathing unevenly, waiting. Because he knew this moment didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. Jenny looked at his boarding pass still clutched in his hand, the proof of something she had once prayed for. He had bought a ticket. He had come without asking anyone. He had finally stepped outside the shadow of everyone else's expectations. But was it too late? Her mind replayed years of memories in flashes. The first time they met, the secret relationship, the lies that hurt, the sacrifices they both made, the way he held her during their wedding, the countless nights she cried quietly while he promised things would change. So much love, so much waiting, so much pain. Jenny, a gate agent called gently, noticing her hesitation. Are you boarding? That simple question cut through everything. Jenny wiped her tears slowly and took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. I spent 10 years fighting for us, she said, looking directly at Sumit, 10 years believing that one day you would choose me without fear. Sumit nodded, unable to speak. And now you finally did, she continued. But something inside me changed while I was waiting. His face tightened slightly, like he already understood what was coming but refused to accept it fully. I'm not the same woman who arrived in India all those years ago, she said. Back then, I would have dropped everything and run into your arms the second you showed up like this. I would have called it fate. A sign. Proof that love wins. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. Now I see it differently. Love isn't just about big, dramatic moments. It's about consistency, safety, feeling chosen every single day. And I stopped feeling that a long time ago. Sumit's eyes filled again. I can give you that now, he said quickly. I swear I can. I'll prove it. Jenny gave a small, sad smile. I believe you want to, she replied. But wanting and doing aren't the same. And I don't have the strength to wait and see anymore. The boarding line had nearly disappeared. Only a few passengers remained. The gate agent glanced at her watch, then back at Jenny. Final call, ma'am, she said gently. Sumit's chest tightened so hard it felt like he couldn't breathe. This was the moment everything would either restart or end forever. Jenny stepped closer to him, so close he could feel the warmth of her presence one last time. She lifted her hand and touched his cheek softly, memorizing the feel of his skin, the shape of his face, the man she had loved for so long. I will always love you, she whispered. Sumit leaned into her hand instinctively, tears sliding down. Then stay, he pleaded quietly. Jenny shook her head, tears falling freely now. Sometimes loving someone means knowing when to let go, she said. And then, before he could say anything else, she pulled him into a tight embrace. Not a desperate one, not a clinging one. A goodbye, a real goodbye. Sumit wrapped his arms around her instantly, holding on like if he let go too soon she would disappear. His shoulders shook with silent sobs he couldn't control anymore. For a moment, the world stood still around them. Then Jenny slowly pulled back. She picked up her suitcase, wiped her face, and turned toward the gate. Sumit watched every step, like it was happening in slow motion. Each step felt like another piece of his heart breaking away. He wanted to run after her, to stop her, to shout something dramatic that would make her turn back. But he didn't, because deep down he knew she deserved peace more than he deserved another chance. Jenny handed her boarding pass to the agent. The scanner beeped softly. The sound echoed in Sumit's ears like the final note of a song ending. She walked down the jet bridge without looking back. Not because she didn't care, but because if she did, she might not have the strength to keep walking. Sumit stood there long after she disappeared from view. The busy airport continued around him, people moving, announcements playing, life continuing as if nothing monumental had just happened. But for him, everything had changed. He looked down at the unused boarding pass still in his hand. The ticket he bought too late. The gesture that came after years of hesitation. Slowly, he crumpled it in his fist. Not out of anger, out of realization. Love doesn't end in one dramatic moment. That IT fades through thousands of small choices. And sometimes by the time you finally choose right, the other person has already chosen themselves. As Jenny's plane lifted into the sky, disappearing beyond the clouds, Sumit stepped outside the airport into the bright daylight. Alone, silent, changed forever, but what nobody expected was what would happen in the weeks after Jenny landed in America, because distance doesn't always end a story. Sometimes it only